say who we are.
Yeah, do you want to begin?
Yeah, I can do it. Okay, hi everyone who is watching. I'm just like, I have no idea where to watch, where to look. My name is Yezenia León Mezu. I'm a Black Indigenous queer femme. I was born and bred in Colombia. I live in Germany a long time already. I do work in educational field, regards everything that has to do with political issues, educational and social justice issues. That's me summed up. You?
Yeah. Hi everyone, my name is Sophia. I am a queer cis woman who's working in the curatorial / exhibition field. My pronouns are she, and I was born and bred in Germany, in Hanau, and my family is partly from Haiti, and my other family is part from Turkish. So that's me. Yeah, that was all I wanted to say.
Yeah, I also forgot to say my pronouns. Thank you for saying
very
that.
important.
I do not use any kind of pronouns, so yeah. This is it. Okay, so our idea of this kind of conversation, which is more kind of a conversation, is to talk about building online communities. How does it work? Is there a thing like community? Why is maybe there a necessity of online communities? What can they reach? Or who can they reach maybe also? And yeah, I think we also forgot both to say that we're both active members at Black Lives Matter Berlin, which is why we're actually here.
Yeah, true.
And I think, yeah, we could start saying a bit around the brief history of Black Lives Matter Berlin.
Sure. Let's keep it short because we don't have a lot of time left. But Yezenia and me are part of Black Lives Matter in Berlin. There's a chapter in Berlin, but Black Lives Matter was founded in the United States of America. It was founded after the murder of Trayvon Martin in Florida and the missing conviction of the man who killed him, actually. So that was 2012. And 2013, it was founded by 3 Black women, but 2 of them were queer. So Black Lives Matter has always been a queer, Black intersectional movement. And that was one of the most important parts also for the chapter in Berlin. The chapter in Berlin was founded in 2017 after a few Black individuals living in Berlin were seeking to form a protest and organize a protest, but at this time they weren't organized. So they met up, organized a protest, and after that pretty much thought that the necessity of a Black Lives Matter panel is important. So they founded one here. And since 2017, it's active in Berlin. And yeah, has some core members and also some supporters and other members. So one of the last important things is that in the US, but also in Berlin, Black Lives Matter has no leader. It is a leader-free movement. So all of the people who organize at Black Lives Matter work on one level. And ideally, which is not always the case, of course, there shouldn't be a hierarchy.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the word online communities.
Yeah, I think that's important to talk about what actually may be the word community, but also what it means to have a kind of a Black community, because Black Lives Matter has always been addressed like worldwide as an organization, as a Black community, which we thought a lot about preparing for this conversation. And I think something that we both came up with is that Black people ain't a monolith. Like, I think when we talk about the word community itself, it suggests that we have a big, scale of people who are all the same, who experience all the same issues, and that's kind of connecting them. So this is why it's a community. And in our experience, as I said, Black people are in a monolith. We don't experience anti-Blackness and power structures the same way. For example, things that count in or they weigh in how Black people around all over the world exist and how they actually are keeping themselves alive has a lot to do with how they have been socialized. It has to be a lot with which strategies or which possibilities they have in the context they grew up. Also, if there's a difference, if a cis Black male has access to spaces and in order to see how the access for Black trans people are. So I think when we talk about community, I think we also romanticize the idea of a community. We do not think so what's needed for a community, and I think this in Germany it's also very specific because demographics play an important role on how we define in Germany the idea of community. An example would be, for example, that not all Black people are German who live in Germany, and so there comes different things with it, without being, for example, me as an example, not being born in Germany, but being socialized in here, and having access to codes and actually to movements. I think colorism is an important thing to talk about when we talk about online communities or a community in general, the idea. So power structures are never out of the conversation, and how Black people have been socialized, and that we're very individuals with very specific stories and histories, I would say. And I think that's something that we often forget in the conversation about community.
Yeah, and then we also talked about the fact that people forget to mention intersectionality. So as you mentioned, as a Black and Indigenous person, it is a completely different reality than a cis Black person who was raised and born in Germany, who has German papers, a German passport, and also German privileges. So we understand that if it comes to community, there's a benefit of it, but also, as you already said, there's a lot of things that have to be considered. That doesn't mean that we don't think Black people share the same history, because as we wanted to state, probably if you use the word Black for people, or you say Black community, most of us share the experience of trauma and the experience of enslavement of our ancestors, but also that in different forms and variations. So we want to acknowledge that being Black and Blackness is shared trauma and enslavement, but also this variation. So this is why in the beginning we wanted to state how we think about Black communities and Black and community in general.
Yeah. And I think also it's not always the shared trauma. I think it's also the different privilege that it comes with it. Having, for example, what you say in Germany, for example, being a German citizen, which is something that leads to another access. And it doesn't mean that you ain't Black. It just means that you have a different scale or on a different, why, I don't know, you have access to other things that a person who, for example, does not have papers, or, for example, has to work all the time to ensure German citizenship. So it's kind of a difference. So that.
And then we also have to talk about colorism as being read as light-skinned people. I, for myself, can say that in different countries I've lived, and in different countries I've traveled to, also traveling is a privilege. People will see me differently. So in Germany, I have the privilege to be passing at some extent. In other countries, I won't. And for the Black community, it is also a hard topic to talk about, because colorism also, for some people, mean that your Blackness isn't acknowledged, which we won't say, but it is important to talk about the variation of being a Black individual and the privileges that come with your proximity to whiteness. So also that is a fact that we wanted to point out before diving into the whole community talk.
Exactly. Okay, so with that being said, there is a necessity of online communities. And we thought about why actually. And I think the first thing we could definitely say is that the accessibility, as we talked about, as Black people, we experience on different scales, as we said before, barriers. We thought about, for example, not able-bodied people who do not have to worry, for example, in an online space about the accessibility of the rooms they have to enter, or fat people who would not have to think about, is there an appropriate chair for me to sit in and feel comfortable, for example, during a conversation, a talk. So there is the necessity for online communities that brings kind of a secure state or kind of a more secure way wherein people can stay indoors if possible. So that means people are less in danger. Being Black and going out to the city, for example, can be a danger depending on where you're moving. We talk also about how easy the barriers of language being in an online space and having, for example, the opportunity to translate way more easier than you have to prepare a whole space like present with people in there, and then you don't know who's coming, for example, and you have to think about okay, how am I going, are all people coming because the language is varied and we can make visible that there are different languages spoken, or is there a possibility for us to even easily translate in a space? So this could be things that we thought that very, very basic, but we talk about and that make a lot of our work easier, thinking about online communities and thinking about online spaces and how their accessibility is.
Yeah, and we also thought about the fact that why is it important? Because last year, in the year of 2019, without COVID, without a pandemic, there is a Black History Month in several countries all over the world. Then we have the Black Lives Matter demonstration, which is in a fixed month also in Berlin. And we have various of events that people can normally attend. So this year, everything is different. And we as a chapter made the decision to not form any protests on the street in person since March. So that was when the state regulations came in, but also it was very unclear of how to protest safely. Is it okay with a mask? Will people obey the rules of safety regulations? So it wasn't about comfort to not demonstrate in times of a pandemic, but it was really about the fact that we could see that everywhere in the world, Black bodies were at stake, because who is suffering the most from a pandemic? And it is people without papers, it is people without insurance, it is marginalized people, people without money, and people without access. And it happens to be, and we know why, that Black people are those people, so can be those people. So for us, the decision to not do a demonstration was merely because we couldn't ensure the safety of Black people on the streets. And also after the murder, the violent murder of George Floyd, what we won't do is putting more trauma on our people during police violations. And the police in Berlin has very easy measures. If you won't wear a mask at the protest, or if you don't have the space to another person, and in demonstrations sometimes that happens, they won't need any measures or anything real, as always, to incarcerate you, be violent, and oppress you. So that was the decision we made, to not do any protests. We were supporting protests in order, not in order, but for the murder of George Floyd, in order to show your solidarity, but we didn't do it ourselves. So from this year, the whole building communities and online spaces were more important than ever, but there were some cons about it. So we wanted also to talk about the difficulties of communities, right?
Yeah, and I think the thing is, even though we can like put visibility for a cause, like for example, as you say, the murder of George Floyd, and also the very, very murder of other Black people, as Breonna Taylor or Kenny McDade, who did not or where there was a necessity to make this thing spread out, because it wasn't this the impact for that deaths were less or on a different way taken out, and I would say kind of also appropriated on a wider scale. There was this necessity to have an access to virtual rooms and sharing this information, even though we know that there's an ambivalence in between what we also talk about and we call trauma porn, because it's also like, if we talk about Black people, always it goes around talking about death, which is also has a lot to do with the structures of oppression of Black people, and even though we see that the building online communities has there is a necessity for building online communities, because they really existing information is spread by online communities on a wider scale and very easily and very rapid. Let's say what it's called IG activism, and we still think that spreading is a first step to organize. There is the impossibility when you have all this information, which also can be a lot, I have to say, coming to the cons, but there is the impossibility at least to ignore for other people who are not victims of this kind of oppression, to ignore this important information and that it's being shared and that people have been talking about this. And this is part of building an online community, because we don't see the community as a physical room, or it's not a physical room existing, but it's definitely a lot of people sharing different feelings, also different, not only information, but also sharing access and starting conversations. I think this is the thing that I want to say. People are discussing an issue and creating spaces for further organizing, which is, for example, what happened after the death of George Floyd, that I know in case that artists, that a lot of people who weren't very active started to organize.
Yeah.
So at the same time, as Sophia said, we have a lot of things that are difficult in building online communities. And it comes with being online means actually very basic, again, to have access to the internet, digital devices, and capital. Because these things, not having access to them and expecting that everyone has a phone or, I don't know, a computer at home or a laptop at home from which you can access the internet or any kind of digital devices, it's kind of classist. It's expecting that all people have the same access to things. And we know, especially Black people, are very affected by classism.
Yeah.
So it could be a form or an excluding mechanism, because if we put all of our conversations and the conversations that are needed for Black people in digital platforms, people would be missed out. It's also very ageist, by the way, to think that community is only built by young people or younger people or people who use social media and this kind of platforms. So what happens to other people, to what happens to the people who actually have been involved in certain ways to break a path or to break a path for us. So that was something we thought about, what is actually problematic in building an online community, because these people will be missing not only the knowledge of that's shared on digital platforms, but also the technical knowledge. They lack a quality of connection, maybe, and there's a lot of people who have not access to a computer. Is that easy also sometimes, or that difficult in that case?
And then we have the whole case of online activism you mentioned, right? And we all talked about it, and we've seen the black squares on your Instagram, and we will maybe talk about this later, because some people felt like sharing a hashtag or retweeting a post might make people feel like they've supported the cause when they've actually just made the bare minimal effort in order to show solidarity and be anti-racist. And we also talked about the internet and formal methods as like a way of the possibility of decolonizing. So is it really a method to write an email and sign petitions? Are there other ways? And what different ways are there to decolonize maybe your working methods? That is something we could also talk about. Yeah. It is important to say that the movement developed online so fast because people couldn't leave their houses or protest in person, as we said. And it was spreading through a global network of activists and also largely via social media. And a lot of people came up to Black Lives Matter, but also to other activists we know, saying that the slides shared on Instagram and Facebook or on Twitter, you name it, actually helped them for the first step, as we said, the bare minimum, to do the self-reflection and the work to show solidarity, go to protests, donate money, etc. So we wanted to state that the whole online community and the online activism should not, be talked bad about or, belittled, but also contextualized, seeing that, as we said, it is the bare minimum to show solidarity or be politicized.
And that it depends, I'm sorry, and that also depends who is doing this bare minimum, from whom we can expect things.
White people.
We said it, white people. So talking about this, I'm thinking about people who are not able, because of different things, who do not have the access to enter a protest or to sign up for a petition, as we said, maybe because they lack the internet, maybe because they lack the knowledge, because a lot of our conversations are putting in a lot of, or in general, social justice conversations are putting in now or moved to platforms like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, etc. I don't know if Facebook so much, but at least IG and Facebook. And so thinking about this, who is also not only able to access this information, but also who can do the minimal effort? From whom should we expect more, and who also can get free education? Because that's something that building online communities we talked about. There is also a privilege in it to have access to information prepared from especially Black people, and especially Black femmes and trans people who are doing a lot of information, issuing their things out, putting it out, and who is profiting on a wider scale from it. And I think this is also something that has a lot to do who can access the spaces, who has access to online activism in general or online communities in general, and that there are differences also putting it out in safer spaces, or if it's not, if disinformations are reshared, something is reshared online, and who can easily access this and put in themselves for their bio as an intersectional oxyminute. So I said what I said.
Yeah. So as you said, in Instagram, for example, because a lot of people rely to Instagram for their knowledge these days, it is an absolute privilege if a Black trans woman is putting together a slide on how to support their people. So what we always state is pay your educators, pay the people for their educational labor. So that is one of the first things you also needed to state when it comes to online communities. There is a privilege, and this privilege also should focus on you, if you're a white individual, paying the people that educate you. So it is for free, but it shouldn't be for free. And no one should actually think that it is for free if you have the financial measures at any point to compensate the people. So we thought about
coming from Black people. Sound slavery. I said it.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. But we're not here to bash the online community.
No.
And we are also part, as Black Lives Matter is mostly online at the moment, of an online community. So we thought we can also talk about on how we can gather and form and take care of each other in an online way. We will not, we can also just state the fact that Black Lives Matter is like a very small team in Berlin. So the resources are always very small. But what we do as a starter is to host an event called Stammtisch. And some of you don't like the title. Blink, blink.
I
So
know why you're looking at me.
it is a monthly gathering of Black people talking about everything they need to talk about, besides, the demonstrations, the gathering, the sharing information.
Part.
Yeah, so that's one of the first measures we actually need, is like talking, besides from being like in politics and also being politicized as like Black individuals. It's something we need to talk about, is there is another room beside that, and that is sharing experiences, maybe also sharing trauma, not all of the time, and sharing how you feel. But when Black Lives Matter came together, there was a plan on how to act, and there was an agenda. It sounds very neoliberal, actually, when you talk about it, but there was an agenda, and we have some of the steps or ways on how to like form an online community or how to gather written down. And I don't think we should talk about all of them, because this shouldn't be a how to form an effective online community as it is stated in the title, because there is no list of how to do that, because as we stated, communities are so full of variety. It is,
and it's a complex thing.
Certain ways to do it, but there's not one way.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, it would ignore the complexions of all the individuals who came to a room, who also have to define this room for themselves. So I think that's a very important thing to state, that we cannot define on how Black spaces or online communities in general should work. This is like how our experience has been so far. And I think, I just forgot that we should keep in mind that online communities are never a substitute for the community idea or communities that we also need being present with each other. Because I think we're gonna get into it, but
and also not a safe space, and I think we both think the same. We would never consider even a Black Lives Matter room a safe space, because still we, suffer from different things. There are different power dynamics, and we want it to be a safer space, but you can never call any room in activism your safe space. So building an online community effectively should never be called a safe space, because it's just too difficult to determine what is safe for me and what is safe for Yezenia. So I think when we talk about the example of Black Lives Matter in Berlin, what drove them together were like several questions. And a lot of them come from anger. So what are you most angry about? What is your frustration about? And can you think of a solution for this problem? And one solution was to actually build a protest, so to form a demonstration. And since this is not possible, we have to come up with other ways. In online,
sorry.
No, you go.
I wanted to say, like, you have to identify your cause. Like, it could be anger, but it could be also like the idea of getting further with a thing that already has been done, but it's like not enough for you. So there's like a lot of groups who say, okay, we organize protests, but this doesn't bring us literally shit. So what can we do more? So identify your cause. I think this is like what unites also a group. Like it's the basis of everything.
And then we have the whole thing called establish your mission, which sounds funny at the beginning, but at Black Lives Matter, we have like several meetings for different subgroups. So during the summer, there was a Black Art Action formed from a subgroup. So if you're part of a Black Art Action, it is a completely different form of activism as, being part of a team who organizes a protest, but it is not less or more important than others. So we have different type of missions, as we call it, maybe. We have like organization and mobilization, we have action and reaction, and we have awareness. So if you maybe are interested in joining a community, and or being political within a group of marginalized people, you can always be sure that there are certain ways and several ways to actually do that. So one of those is to think about how you want to work and how you want to perceive in the group. And yeah, it could be the Black Art Action, or it could be the demonstration panel, or maybe also doing research for the Black History Month.
Yeah, or in general, just to be a self-care group. That's also something that could be
self-care, meditation, movement,
whatever. Exactly. And I think coming to that, it's also thinking about how to activate your cause, because I think we're talking about building online communities, so we need tools. We need tools to work with, and we need also tools that cannot be just hijacked from other people also. So like talking about security, not only between us, but also on a wider scale, like with what happens to online security, which informations can we share through a space, are also important things to do, like which tools are we using? Do I have to upload everything on Google Docs, or is there another option? So do I have, like, which kind of social media, for example, idea we can also have that not only stays inside of social media, for example, like Instagram posts or something, so we can also share somewhere else, online petitions, blogs. And then, as I said, what does it also mean what happens if we need money? Because seriously, that's something people don't like to talk about, but a lot of organization also in online communities is all we do is not founded or put, like, there's no people putting in money on it. So it's a lot of time, it's a lot of energy. And yeah, what happens to crowdfunding? How can you organize to have at least a bit of money? And it starts with even printing a flyer, but it ends also with making t-shirts, or making it accessible for people again to enter this space, because they don't have, I don't know, enough money on their phones to have, I don't know, ID Talk paid or something.
That was something we tried during the pandemic, was doing a lot of fundraisers with different measures, like doing a techno fundraiser, because you are in Berlin and you will reach obnoxious white people if you do a techno fundraiser. It comes to doing Küfa, it comes to asking white people to deliver money and food and meals to people who are in need. So there are different ways of like getting money, but also getting people to actually like redistribute that money, because redistribution is another topic we wanted to talk about. And in all this, when it comes to tools and platforms, as Yezenia said, it's a lot about the way you choose your platform. So is there maybe a safer way than WhatsApp? Is there maybe a safer way than Instagram or Google Docs? So when it comes to gatherings, it is always useful to maybe have someone interested in tech, and you don't have to be experienced in tech. Just an interest is slightly enough, because there is a topic called cybersecurity or proxy service that some of you maybe should look into, because as marginalized people gather, it is not, as we said, a safe space, and it is also important to protect this information you gather for demonstrations, for resources. So cybersecurity is a big topic we also work for, and it should be a topic for everyone basically who considers themselves an activist or does activist work. So book that cybersecurity workshop.
Book that cybersecurity workshop. You don't want at the end of the day people having information about you, because you don't know, the revolution shouldn't be televised.
Maybe should we talk about self-care?
Yeah, but I think like maybe a step before that, it's also I think, I don't know if we pointed it out, but I think collective power. We talk about a lot of self-care, and self-care is really important. I'm not going against it, but I think what happens to collective power, healing collectively, because the idea of self-care always is also a capitalistic way on how you should do. You can sit there and buy your candle and lit your candle up, like that costs 35 euros from with specific scent, and then you can lay down in your bed. This could also be self-care. And you can put that's also like a very classism. I mean, I know this is a very specific example, but
yeah, maybe the letter of engagement.
Yeah, but what happens with like community care? How do we build community structures also online? And that can be as easy as just attending an event together with people that you have met online, and they share the information with you. But this could also be planning a meeting about talking about what's happening, planning a meeting about how you're feeling, planning a meeting where you look at each other and you just cook,
That's
but it can also be on a wider scale of organizing, coordinating events together, planning again a meeting, running of actions, delegate also responsibility, because I think this is a main thing we do not like to talk about, because we want lower hierarchies, but we do not talk about what it means also to be responsible, and that has a lot to do with also my boundaries. And yeah, from that point, maybe also to talk about then self-care, knowing your own limits, establishing your own boundaries, and that there has to be a space also in building online communities, or in general building communities where you can share your boundaries, and that's a safer space, and that it's not something that's going to be put out against you or something.
Yeah, because different people have different realities in life. So also at Black Lives Matter, you can do the bare minimum and like join a meeting, share petitions, maybe write information on the website, but you can also oversee a major project. Everything is possible. And as you said, it's a lot about boundaries, the boundaries, but then also self-care. And self-care, the first step for self-care is also honesty, I think, because we in an online community rely that we talk as honest as possible, because honesty is a difficult topic sometimes about our boundaries and about our feelings. And we'd like to start by asking how we feel today, and what can we do today, actually. So how do you feel? Where are your boundaries? What can you take on? Or maybe you can't take on anything, and maybe this is not the best day for a meeting. So knowing self-care, it is, as you said, knowing your limits and establishing the boundaries, and also communicate them to your peers, because they rely on your honesty. And then also recognizing the emotional toll we all have to face and suffer, because some of us work full time, some of us have children, some of us care for our elderlies. So we need this honesty, but also we need resources on, as you said, to heal. So in order to be healthy, or try to stay as healthy as you can, maybe think about healing circles, think about empowerment workshops, and think about resources to share in the group.
And sometimes this resource sharing can also just be sending a TikTok, or like, it's as stupid as it is. We're talking about online spaces, and the internet has
sending a meme.
A meme, sharing something. I know in the fact that people curated during this whole pandemic TikToks, and I enjoyed that, because it was for me a way to not, because also online communities means to have access to a lot of pain too, and it's nice also just to sometimes just be offline, just be offline, but also, and then if you're online, just to see something that makes you smile. And if it's Black people dancing to something like, this kind of dance that everyone was doing, like, I'm a savage thingy, it can be that, and it's fine.
Guilty. Yeah, so small steps.
Yeah, and also, as I said, take breaks from news and social media, because that also can be even in organizing, when we build online communities, when we share a lot of information through social media, through online spaces. We also get a lot of messages containing hell of depiction of pain, like, for example, thinking, sorry?
the suffering we see
the
in the
suffering,
messages.
and that this also can be too much on you. So it's okay, you like, at the same time, building an online community, as we said, it's to establish strong boundaries and being honest with yourself and say, okay, sorry, this is something I cannot see anymore because this is taking too much from me, even though maybe I'm not the I don't know, familiar with a specific topic or something. Just seeing this can be triggering for my personal experiences. So I think it's very, very important also sometimes just to take it off and to communicate this again, because it's a space where you in best case can express this kind of feeling of being exhausted or whatever you're feeling.
Actually, on a last note, it is always easy to say, yeah, get your self-care, but then we also know psychiatrists and mental health issues in Berlin, it is super hard to get a space. You have to have insurance or either pay it yourself. Paying it yourself is super expensive. So of course it is easy to say, do your self-care, but it is a privilege to live in Berlin because we have several spaces that offer counseling. So if you search for like an address, maybe go to Les Migras. If you're young and you want to join a youth group, maybe ask someone at EOTO. That's the thing. You have like all these different groups, and just the first step would be seeking help. So that's also part of an online community. We don't have a lot of time left, so maybe do you want to?
Wow, we sure did. Damn. Okay, so but last but not least, I think sometimes it's also something that I practice right now a lot. It's to express gratitude in a group. I think building online communities, we take so much for granted. We take a lot of the work that people do for granted. We take a lot of the things that people say for granted. A lot of the time, sometimes people spend in the space. We take a lot of things for granted. And I think sometimes it's also or not sometimes, but actually always, it's very nice to hear, you did this nice, or thank you so much for spending time with doing this, or whatever it is. And if it's sometime you sharing sometime a research that you found on IG, or tweeting something, or sending them email through, or printing something out that people wouldn't have otherwise access to it.
Yeah, and if you see this and feel lonely or know someone who's lonely, it is, as we said, the internet, it is a good cause and a bad cause. Search for your resources, maybe let someone do it for you, let a white friend do it for you, because there are ways and measures to become a member of an online community if you want, or if not, meet people offline, because that's also a possibility after the pandemic is over in like several years of time.
Which we hope it's happening, or people can also organize to find ways, structures on how to maybe help other people that can, that do not have the possibility for whichever reason to access what they needed. So I think also, seriously, bring up self-care in a group. I think we also, when you organize online, you concentrate a lot on the tasks that you have to do, and it's okay and it's important, but it's important also to bring it even as a topic in the conversation, and to schedule time off. And last but never least, I think anticipate that there will always be disagreements and conflict within your group. To make we're humans, we come from different spaces, we have different necessities, and I think it's really important to make a plan with maybe other group members on how to deal with conflict.
Get a mediator, get someone from outside to help you, not, with a conflict. And non-violent communication is key, whatever that means inside your group. I think we have 1 minute left, or not even.
Oh my God, so, wow, we rushed through it. We're so sorry.
This was more a lecture because no one had questions. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Yezenia, for doing it with me, and me.
Thank you so much for asking.
And thank you, Dice, for inviting us. Hope you enjoyed it, and maybe see you around at the conference or the festival.
Yeah, and I mean, if you have other questions, you can send them through. I mean,
And the Black Lives Matter Instagram, which we answer.
Anywho, yeah. So send them through. Thank you so much for making time in this space. Take good care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Love you. Being gratitude.
Were you saying this to me or were you saying this to someone else?
No, to you, of course.
Oh, yeah, I love you too.
No, express the gratitude, as we said. Grateful.
I'm very thankful also for this day.